Hi everybody, I'm back. I've been gone a long time. It's been 2 years since I've last made a video. And I want to thank everyone who has made comments and who has subscribed to me. And I'm really appreciative of all the viewers who have made my numbers go really high on older women, younger men. And today I'm here to tell you what it's like 33 years later. I asked my husband, I said, what should I talk about? You know, we're happily married. We've had all these incidences. And he said, well, where did you leave off? By the way, he's never seen the video. And I asked him, did you see the video? He said, no, I haven't. Because he said, I've lived it. But he said, where did you leave off? And I said, where we met. And he said, well, tell the next incident that you remember. And that isn't hard for me to do, because I have 2 stories to share that happened right in that year, 1986. We met in November of 85, and I remember 2 incidences so well that happened to me in 1986. The first one, Brian wanted to introduce me to all of his friends. Now, if you haven't seen the first video, I suggest that you do, because I tell all the facts about our differences in ages. I will tell you now, I'm 19 years older than he is. So when all of his friends were going to come to town, they're 20 years younger than I am. And he said, oh, I'm really happy because I know you love to dance, Kay, and the Great American Music Hall is hosting Pride and Joy. And it's a fantastic band. It's still in existence to this day. And I did love to dance. Unfortunately, I don't dance as much anymore, but it was fun and I was very excited. But I was worried because I thought, these are all young women and men and guys, you know, they're going to be judgmental. And I felt very vulnerable, like what I'll be judged. And here Brian and I were very much in love, as I've said in the first video, and we still are. But he wanted me to meet his friends. He was proud of me. So I hesitated, and then he kind of demanded that we do this. So they all came to town, and we met them at the Great American Music Hall. And it was fabulous. The music was blaring, you know, when we came in there, and I hadn't danced in a long time. And since he really isn't a dancer, I was able to dance with all of his friends, which made it kind of broke the ice. It was great. So at that point, I didn't feel like an old woman. Well, I actually wasn't that old then. I was 45, or 44. But I didn't feel older. I felt a part of the group. It was fine, it was. But something happened that changed everything, and that is this. I didn't drink because, as I've told you in the previous video, I came from an alcoholic home, drugs and alcohol, and I was married to an alcoholic for 12 years, and it was extremely difficult, challenging, and I was a severe codependent woman, and it took me years, 7 years of therapy to get well. So I didn't drink at all, and I knew that there's going to be tons of beer. I think it's pretty much beer, at least in those days. But I was having so much fun, I didn't care. Then I walked back to the table. After being there maybe about a few hours, I walked back to the table, and there were glasses right in front of him. And Brian was buzzed, and he had told me before we left. I had told him about my codependency and how hard it was for me. And he said, I don't drink. That's what he told me. Well, when I got to the table, he was pretty buzzed. And then I counted, imagine, I was so anal at that time in my life. I counted 13 drinks in front of him. And I thought, I panicked. The fear just rose up inside of me like, oh man, because I did not want to be married or even be going with a person who's alcoholic. And he said he didn't drink, and he was already getting buzzed. And something happened. I flipped out. I took my purse, I left. I remember I ran down the hall. It was empty. And there was a real long hall somewhere going outside. And I ran down, and one thought went through my mind, and that was, you're going to embarrass him. Why are you doing this? I couldn't help it. It was just like I couldn't be with somebody again after all those years of growing up. You know, I was 44 by that time. Years of living with alcoholics and going through therapy myself. So I got a cab, and we didn't have cell phones then. I don't even know how I got the cab. I don't remember any of it. But I went home to where he had moved in with me. I forgot to tell you that. He had moved in after 10 weeks of us. He was my neighbor, and as I told you in the first video, he moved across the street. We were living together by this time. And when I got home, I threw up all night. I was sick as a dog. I mean, it was really bad. And I don't remember the thoughts I had, but it was fear. It was such fear that here I'd finally met someone that I loved, and he was such a good man. He was so sweet and kind and fun and all of it except the drinking. And so I couldn't handle it, and so I went crazy. And I don't remember where he slept that night. I did hear him come home. I don't remember that part. But the next morning, he said to me, "Let's go in the kitchen. I want to talk to you." And he said to me, why did you do that? And then again, I was very ashamed because I probably embarrassed him. I mean, who wouldn't be embarrassed when they were coming to meet me? Well, that was one of the reasons. And then I left him, and nobody even knew, and he didn't know. He said, "I was worried about you. Why did you take off?" And I just looked at him, and he said, "Kay, if I didn't know better, I would think you're an alcoholic because you threw up all night. You've been sick." I said, "I know, I can't help it. It's emotional. It's part of my life. It's I just can't help it." And I said, "Brian, I think maybe you should move out." And he was shocked and very disappointed. And of course I was hurt. I didn't want to do that, but I felt like I had to. Because before we got in too deep, or before we ever married. And by the way, I had told my girlfriend that I'd never lived with anybody before marriage after my ex and I had this 12-year relationship. And here I'd moved in with him after 10 weeks. So I was in love. It was the first time that I felt true love. I really did. And yet I'm telling him, "I think you should leave." And he was very calm. He's a very strong guy and practical and extremely sensible. And he said, "What can I do to prove it to you that I'm not alcoholic?" And I said, "Can you stop drinking? Can you not take a drop for 6 months?" And he said, "Yes, I can." And he ended up not drinking for almost a year after that. I didn't ask him to go that long, but he just was determined to show me that he was an alcoholic. And then he said to me, "Kay, all those bottles weren't mine." It didn't even occur to me that they weren't his. I mean, that's how out of it I was, how scared I was about my past and about the future. And I had counted, well, they all were drinking. But I didn't even think about that because I wasn't. So we continued on and lived together for many months, and we got deeper in love, and we shared a lot of experiences together. And he said, when we were planning to get married, this was approximately maybe 5 or 6 months after we had met. I don't really remember the date. He said, "I want you to meet my mother before I want anyone else to know. We're not telling anyone. We're not going to tell our friends, nobody, that we're engaged." And I thought, oh no, I'm going to meet his mother. I'm telling you, talk about fear. I am 1.5 to 2 years, I'm about 1.5 years, I'd say, older than his mother. And I just knew. I mean, my emotions were just like twisted because I knew I had empathy for her as well. And I had finally met this man, and I just knew, both of us knew, we had been inseparable since we met the day, that wanted a life together. But she had raised 4 kids, he has 3 sisters, and I knew she was not going to be happy. And I don't blame her. Because she didn't know me, she lives in another state, and because I'm an older woman, and it's just, people don't think about it. So I said, okay. So he said, I'm going to go down. I was so scared. I said, I don't really want to go. Why don't you go down? She was in Southern California visiting her sister who lives in Southern California. And he said, went down for the weekend. He drove down there. It takes about 8 hours from San Francisco. And apparently, and I was nervous the whole time he was gone, but at least I wasn't there and having to deal with that. And he came home, and he said, I couldn't tell her. He was just scared, probably. He didn't say, he said, I couldn't tell her. He said, I want her to meet you. I want her to see you. And I thought, oh, no, man. So he said, we're going to go next weekend. And we did. And that whole week I suffered. And I called my girlfriend. I did anything, but we couldn't get out of it. And we drove the 8 hours, and we talked. And he said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. The next morning, we were going to visit his aunt. His aunt, he knew that he and his mom would go shopping, like I think grocery shopping, I'm pretty sure. He said tomorrow morning, we left on a Friday, he said tomorrow morning I am going to take her to the grocery store or wherever they went, and I'm going to tell her then when you're with my aunt. And I said, okay. Oh man. So they left, and again I threw up all night. I did not sleep a wink. I mean, not a wink. I was petrified. This is a man I want. And you know, marriage is a big deal. And people want connections. They want, and when you're lucky enough and fortunate enough to find someone, you don't want these kind of experiences. But this is what it happened because our age difference was so great, and it wasn't really accepted in society that much then. Fortunately, it's a lot better now. But it isn't just that it's the older woman, younger man. It probably happens with older men and younger women too. It was just a big deal. So I didn't sleep the whole night, and then they went out of the house, they went shopping. And his aunt, I told his aunt then what was happening and how we felt about each other. And she was so loving and supportive. Oh my gosh. She said, his mom will get over it. She'll get over it. She'll get used to it. I said, really? Because it had been a very somber night. Trust me. That Friday night when we got there, it was not fun. You know, there was tension, a lot of tension. She said, she'll get over it. So we waited and waited, and the two of us went out. I think we went for a walk. I think it might have been on the ocean. I don't really remember, but we went for a beautiful walk. And when we came back, Brian and his mother were pulling up in the car, and then they got out. And I looked at her, and I'm telling you, she looked like she'd been to a funeral, like somebody had died. It was really bad. She was so sad, not saying a word. She was following him, behind him. And I was miserable. And the reason I'm sharing all this with you is because I have received so many letters and comments and about people's fears and what they go through. And some people are unfortunate enough that they live in countries where they'd be arrested. It's illegal in some countries. I get comments from all over the world. But that's how I felt, and I'm sharing it with you because I want to tell you what happened later. So they came in. She wouldn't look at me or talk to me. I mean, that was the way it was. And then his aunt took off. Well, about an hour or two later, not much was said. We sat in silence. Actually, I don't remember what we did, but it wasn't fun. And his aunt came back in a couple of hours, and she brought me a gift, and I want to show you what it is. She brought me this little angel, and just this morning I picked it up, and it's so old, it's coming loose, but she gave me this angel, and it looks like a bride, and she said, wished us well, and it was so moving to me that I've kept it all these years on my dresser. And I asked his aunt about maybe a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so, I said, do you remember how much that meant to me? She didn't remember it at all. That's what shows you that will show you what happens when time passes. And it has been a long time. But for me, this was something really great. And I'm hoping that all of you will have patience. And if you really do want a relationship, keep in mind something. We all bring a ton of baggage to our relationships. We really do, all of us. It's a rare person that has had a cushy life or balanced and all that. Most of us are a little unbalanced sometimes. So be patient with each other. And this isn't only for older women, younger men. It's pretty true in all relationships. It just so happened that we were meant to be together, and we've made it work. We adopted a child. I told you that. She's now 24. And it's been a great, great life. And I want all of you to have that. I truly do. So before I go, I want to show you something. This card, I made a series of affirmation and paintings. These are my original paintings. This is just one of them. It's called Art and Soul. It's about transformation. And I made this painting, this one, I painted for Brian's mother about maybe 10 years ago or so. I don't remember when, especially for her, because we love each other. I love his family. They love me. It has been a beautiful existence. I didn't have my family all died young. I had no one. So now I have them, and they're wonderful. They are my family. And this is the card, this is the painting that I did for her, and this card is called Gratitude. And some people use it like they take all the different cards that I've made and they haul one out, they'll pull it out and use it for the day. Well, I'm using this one for the day because I'd like you to see or hear what the information is, and I'll read it to you as well. It says, I truly appreciate my family, my friends, and my life. I say thank you often throughout the day. Until next time, have a great day.